It's the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
As the Stanley Cup playoffs continue on ESPN, anything is possible. So the decorations could get a little out of hand. And a city could get a new landmark. Could a kraken arise? Could the storm surge? Could it happen for the first time? Could it happen again? Yeah, that could happen. That is playoff hockey. The Stanley Cup playoffs continue on ESPN.
The New Jersey Devils are on the cusp of being a perennial threat in that Metro division, and we're going to break down where they go from their playoff exit against the Carolina Hurricanes on today's episode. And, of course, we have to break down what the Edmonton Oilers do with their postseason exit and everything in between. Let's get right to it. Thank you for joining us for Tuesday's episode.
You're Locked On Fantasy Hockey, your daily podcast on fantasy hockey. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome back inside the lab, everybody, and thank you for tuning in for the Tuesday episode of the Locked On Fantasy Hockey Podcast. Thank you for making us your first listen every single day. We are a part of the Locked On Network, your team every single day, and today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. Steele, I got the business matters out of the way, and let's get down to the brass tacks, because once again, you and I are at an abundance of good topics to talk about. Sometimes we have to kind of grind it out. The Hurricanes take down the Devils in 5 games. I don't think this is any kind of loss for the Devils. I think the future is bright. We're going to break down why. The cap situation, the prospect pool, some good young players on the come up. I'm sure both you and I want to talk about that. And of course, maybe more, tantalizingly, this Edmonton Oilers situation, the Vegas Golden Knights have some really good things going for them. I know we want to talk about that. And perhaps more importantly, that supporting cast in Edmonton doesn't get it done once again. Lots of issues to talk about. No bets for today's episode, but that's okay because there are plenty intriguing topics to get to. And Steele, why don't we get to the one right off the top? What does the future hold for the Devils? What went wrong for the Devils? Because this team is right on the cusp of being, like I said, a perennial threat in that Metro division. Just right there.
Yeah, they have a bright future. And the way Jack Hughes played this season, even in the postseason as well, he's the franchise player and finally coming into fruition after struggling the first 2 years in the NHL. But before I get to what went wrong, I got to say that this was a very successful season for the New Jersey Devils. And it's kind of funny that I'm saying that because yesterday we were talking about how it was an unsuccessful season for the Toronto Maple Leafs. But they're in two different aspects of their franchise and organization right now. And the reason why I say it's a successful season for the Devils was because the last 5 years, the Devils have missed the playoffs. They were finishing 27th, 28th, 29th in the league. And then out of nowhere, just boost their results up and just skyrocket in the standings this season. And, they, as a team, as individuals as well, setting a bunch of franchise records this season, franchise best 52 wins in a season, largest point improvement in NHL history as well, franchise record in points with 112, individual record for Jack Hughes, franchise record 99 points. So there's a lot to like and a lot to love from what we saw from the New Jersey Devils. Even that 13-game win streak they had in the middle of the season was unreal to watch. But so there's a lot to like, there's a lot to love about where they're at right now and where they're headed in the future. But what went wrong this postseason? For me, it comes down to the lack of experience and the lack of offense we saw in both the rounds, not just the second, in both the first and the second. You and I have talked a little bit about, they have a few players who have that experience. Of course, Andre Palat was massive. Getting him back into the lineup before the postseason started was just great news itself. But Andre Palat, Eric Holla, Dougie Hamilton a little bit. But besides that, they don't have the experience like the Carolina Hurricanes, like the Toronto Maple Leafs, like the team, it's kind of a weird year.
True.
It's kind of a weird year, honestly, because the Seattle Kraken are in Game 7 with the Dallas Stars. The Dallas Stars are there, but nonetheless.
Yeah, it's been, yeah.
Yeah, the New Jersey Devils, to me, they didn't have a ton of experience going into the postseason. And then just the lack of offense was very surprising, might I add, because they were one of the highest scoring teams in the regular season. So just a lack of experience, lack of offense. And what you and I both feared would happen to the Carolina Hurricanes is exactly what happened to the New Jersey Devils. We thought the Hurricanes were going to struggle scoring goals, but they did not, especially in that second round against the Devils. And you said something yesterday, and this goes back to what Rick Bowness said after the Jets lost as well. When they had their back against the wall, they had zero pushback whatsoever. No pushback. Even Lindy Ruff said it himself. There was no pushback in Game 3 or Game 4, whatever game it was.
Right.
But it's just, lack of experience, lack of goals. You look at the entire 5-game series, you take away Game 3 where the Devils scored 8 goals. They only had 5 goals in 4 games. They just weren't producing offensively, and that's why they almost got swept. And then I think, you want to break down into some of their future stuff, but they've got 5 UFAs. They've got 8 RFAs as well. They've got a few guys that they need to re-sign and to continue going with Jack Hughes and Nico Hischier and all those guys.
There is a lot. You're going off right now, and that's why I just sometimes have to go like Ferme La Bouche, because you're on fire there. Excuse me. There are just a lot of positive signs for this team, and I think that's my main takeaway. And everything you're saying is spot on. And for me, when I look at that future contract breakdown and what they are able to get done, couple of very team-friendly deals, Nico Hischier's deal being right at the top of that. I think they're going to have that ability to re-sign the Timo Meyers of the world, the Jesper Bratz of the world. I think they're going to get that done. Obviously, that leaves a little bit of a caveat with this team, but the core that's there is just so good. And for me, just before we move on a little bit to more of the future, Dougie Hamilton in the postseason just wasn't good enough for me.
No,
that's one of the first things that I wanted to make sure we get in on this episode in terms of what went wrong for the New Jersey Devils. He's a really good defenseman, in my opinion. And you see Luke Hughes step in, and I'm going to get to that point in a second. In 3 games, he has 2 assists. And in 12 games, Dougie Hamilton's minus 11 and only has 4 points. Offense is the key to Dougie Hamilton's game. And if he's not bringing those, nice passes from the points or power play quarterbacking situations, Steele, for me, that's where I think this team didn't have the teeth that they needed to prop up the Vitek, Vanacek, Akira Schmid combo. That is also one of the Achilles heels of this team that they might need to address.
Yeah.
Young goalies for sure. Maybe you give them 1 more year together, maybe more of a tandem to give Schmid a little bit more of a run out in the regular season. But very lastly, Steele, headed into next season, I just think they have some interesting decisions to make. Here we go. I'm going to spit it out because of these really good young players that they have in the system.
Yeah.
Holtz, Nemec, and Luke Hughes. Those are 3 top draft picks and all really, really good projected NHLers. So I think this team might be really showing some depth, but they're going to have to get interesting with the cap and get talented with shuffling the deck. Like you said, lots of UFAs. We're going to talk a little bit more about the Edmonton Oilers and, of course, what they did with their goaltending situation. We might have a few more takes, actually, Steele, for this Edmonton Oilers, New Jersey Devils, Carolina Hurricanes situation as well. Today's episode, my friends, though we got to pay these bills, is brought to you by Game Time. You never want to be stressed out when you're going to buy tickets for your favorite event or your favorite sporting event, because that is not what you pay your money for. And that's why you download the Game Time app, where nothing is stressful with buying the tickets to your favorite event. It's fast and easy to buy tickets for everything from sports to music to comedy and theater, all near you. With killer deals and last-minute tickets on the Game Time app with their best price guarantee, you can stop stressing over tickets and start getting hyped for all the fun you're going to have. Flash deals and last-minute tickets, easy ways to buy and find every kind of event in your area, including the actual images of the seat you're going to sit from. And aside from that lowest price guarantee, you know that you don't have to plan months in advance with Game Time. They have the tickets right up to the day of the event, and you get exclusive deals for all of your favorite events, from football to hoops to baseball to concerts, comedy, theater, and even more. The Game Time guarantee means you get the best price, and if you find tickets in the same section or row for less, Game Time credits you for up to $110 of the difference. Snag the tickets without the stress with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed.
And thank you so much for making the Locked On Fantasy Hockey Podcast your first listen every single day. We are a part of the Locked On Podcast Network, where you can find a Locked On podcast of your favorite team in all 4 major sports leagues and the NCAA, your team every single day. We are going to get to what happened with the Edmonton Oilers and the Vegas Golden Knights, losing in 6 games. Connor McDavid, Leon Draisaitl, they are sent home packing. Well, I guess they were actually in Edmonton for the game.
Nah, they were packing.
Yeah, they were packing. They were sent home. But yeah, let's continue on the conversation of this New Jersey Devils team and what their future sort of holds. For me, everything that you were just talking about, Vitek, Vanacek, Akira Schmid, I would love to see them run it back next year, and I would love to see them go 50-50. I think Mackenzie Blackwood is on his way out. He's an RFA at the end of the season. They're gonna, Akira Schmid is still on his entry-level contract at $850,000 a year right now. So you create a little bit more cap space, letting Mackenzie Blackwood hit the free market or hit the free agency, and run it back with Vanacek and Akira Schmid. Even though
they have to.
Yeah, even though Vanacek had a very poor postseason, he was great in the regular season. And again, this just goes hand in hand with the lack of experience, not just those two have, but the entire team. Again, I'm looking at their roster right now. You have Andre Palat, who's by far their best veteran and who has the most playoff experience. He's 32 years old. Thomas Tatar is 32. And Eric Haula is 32. Yeah, Tatar's probably gone, but what I'm getting at is they only have 3 players, maybe 4 players that are above the age of 30 on this team. Other than that, you've got Jack Hughes, Nico Hischier, Jesper Bratt, Timo Meier, Igor Sharangovich, Michael McLeod, Dawson Mercer. All those guys are 26 years old or younger and haven't been in the playoffs before. So,
and it showed.
Great team, bright future.
Oh yeah,
they just got caught by one of the hottest teams this season. So, unfortunate they lose in 5 games. I would have loved to see a 7-game series. I thought they could make that happen, but they just got blown out of the park by the Hurricanes.
And they need some credit on their name for taking out a really good New York Rangers squad. Yes. I think that's something that needs to be on the resume of accomplishments for this team, Steele. And because, sure, the Rangers underperformed. I think you said it. I was
just about to say
hold on. I think you called them out for playing atrociously, I believe was the term that you used. And maybe that's accurate, but still that's a check in the column for this New Jersey Devils team.
Yes.
And I think that's one of the main points here, because also fantasy-wise, this team's going to score a SHIT ton of goals next season, in my opinion. And I think you're just going to have to keep it tapped to everything we just said also about some of these young guns coming up. Luke Hughes is going to be a beast. Alexander Holtz is, I think, one of those other intriguing names. And then they all those, Simon Nemec, what did they get him at, 3rd or 4th?
I think he was 3rd or 4th. Yeah, he was right there.
He's right there. So, all these prospects are very, this is a future kind of angle. But when you think about what they have already going on, and even if one of those top pricks pans out, all of a sudden you have maybe one of the most talented one of the most talented young lineups in this game. So future is bright. We mentioned what went wrong. The Metro Division favorites, in my opinion, maybe headed into next season, Steele. That was my last little note here, because you and I are going to start taking a look at some futures bets. They got to be right there with the Rangers as the Metro Division favorites next season. It's going to be close. That was my last little peek that I wanted to throw your way.
Every team is continuing to get better and better. It's unreal. That Metropolitan
bad news for the Toronto Maple Leafs.
Look, Carolina, You got New York Rangers. You still got Pittsburgh and Washington fighting for spots. They were unhealthy the entire season. So it's a hard division in the Metro. It looks like Columbus is the only team on the outside trying to claw their way up the standings.
There he is.
It's crazy in the Metro. It's also crazy in the Pacific.
There he is.
Edmonton Oilers lose in Game 6 against the Vegas Golden Knights at home. They lose 5-2 in Game 6.
Yeah.
And you and I were both wrong, obviously. I think we both had Vegas missing the playoffs, and we both had Edmonton winning in Game 6.
Been so wrong. So wrong.
Been so wrong with the Vegas Golden Knights. The thing was, too, is I was so hyped and high on Jack Eichel and his return. I should have been focusing on the whole team as a whole. But nonetheless, Edmonton Oilers losing 6 games. I'll throw it over to you, Flip, because I really want to hear what you think went wrong with the team. And then we'll fly back over to me and what I think went wrong. But what do you think went wrong with the Edmonton Oilers?
First of all, there were some questionable decisions made with what the goaltending situation was going on in Edmonton. Yeah. And I'm going to tip my cap to you, first of all, because as much as my call to put Skinner in there was what the coach did, I don't know if it was the right thing, especially when, let me just pull this up because this is right here at the top of my notes. Sunday, the deciding game, he lets in 4 goals on 17 shots, lowering his save percentage in the series to .875. And when you're getting outdueled by a guy in Adin Hill, which no disrespect to Adin Hill, who has a .934 save percentage in his postseason appearances, this is not time to hate on the goalie that took out the team that you thought was going to win time, Steele. You're just not good enough. And so that's where you have to put those decisions under the microscope. And I'll throw that back over to you in a second for your take on that, because you've been very critical of Jeff Skinner, a rookie goaltender, by the way. So let's maybe treat that with the angle it deserves. But this is where I want to take this conversation, because once again, and I think you'll back me up here, I mentioned the front office of the Vegas Golden Knights staff really putting together a very nice balanced attack of good hockey players. Full stop. So when I look at this stat, Steele, the Vegas Golden Knights outscored the Edmonton Oilers 15-9 at 5-on-5. And when the trio of Marchessault, Eichel, and Barbashev were on the ice, how about outscored the Edmonton Oilers 7-1? So Barbashev, Eichel, and Marchessault are beasting on the best forward unit, arguably, in the game this year, and the best power play unit. I know that's not 5-on-5 metrics, but just getting it done against the best power play unit ever in the history of the NHL.
Yeah, unreal. And Jack Eichel, one of the players that I've been talking about all season long, coming through in the clutch in the postseason. He's been spectacular. But yeah, there's a lot of things that I think went wrong with the Edmonton Oilers. First off, just very uncharacteristic penalties throughout the entire series. Bad penalties. The thing was, it didn't even hurt them in the long run. They were actually great on the penalty kill, but if you're in the box so many times and so often, it's going to hurt you down the stretch. And especially in Game 6, when it was 4-on-4, and Mattias Ekholm's
penalty was so pivotal.
Atrocious. Just hit from behind, cross-check, throw you in the box. It's 4-3. And the thing was, again, they didn't score on the power play, but they scored 2 seconds right after it. Marchessault to finish off that hat trick of his in Game 6. But yeah, so uncharacteristic penalties throughout the entire series. But for me, the problem, it was Stuart Skinner. It just hands down was. He was not good enough. And it's Stuart Skinner. And I'm also
going to fair take, Steele.
I'm going to throw Jay Woodcroft in there as well, because
I knew you would. I was ready for it.
The man is just stuck in his way. Like, I actually think he just assumed that he wouldn't have to actually coach or do anything, and just let McDavid and Draisaitl carry the entire team to a Stanley Cup championship. He didn't.
They almost did.
He tried playing mind games, and then didn't. Like, it just was. It was a poor effort from the coaching staff, especially Jay Woodcroft. He didn't change anything. But I want to stick on the topic of Stuart Skinner, because he wasn't good enough. And this is why this is what happened in all of his stats. He started all 12 games in the postseason for the Edmonton Oilers, but he was pulled 4 times, yet they continue to go back to him every single time the next game, even with all the inconsistencies in his game. So that number one just showed me Jay Woodcroft was stuck in his way and didn't want to.
He's a rookie, though, right? He's a rookie.
I don't know about that, but
no. But I'm not here to defend his play. I'm just here to, again, maybe actually support what you're saying about Woodcroft in the rookie's had enough. You know, like he's been shelled.
Yeah.
Mans are giving up. This is where I'm trying to just throw out another angle, Steele, because I'm
No,
not
of
here to
course.
disagree with poor play. It's just the man he's a rookie. So Woodcroft is also on my hit list if I'm an Oilers fan. Just right
Yeah,
now.
he should be, because I just thought that he just stood there and wasn't actually coaching anything. But Stuart Skinner, very inconsistent throughout the postseason. He had 8 games where he allowed 4 or more goals in the
bad.
playoffs. Like,
Not
that's
good
just
enough.
not allowed. And
No.
again, Campbell didn't start any of the games. He didn't start a single one, but he played 120 minutes. That's equivalent to 2 games right there. He had 1.01 goals against average with a 961 save percentage. So I understand you haven't started. You're coming into a game, and even then, you're coming into a game. You haven't even been loosened up. You haven't seen a puck. You haven't seen a shot yet. And you go out and put up those stats. So for me, when Jack Campbell goes out and does that, I don't understand why he's not in the crease. And Campbell's time,
Fair point.
with the LA Kings and the Leafs over the last 4 years, his stats never dropped below a 907 save percentage, and it never went above a 2.72 goals against average in the last 4 years.
To be fair, Steele, 907 save percentage in the playoffs is not very good.
It's
good when you compare.
The average. That was the average. In one of the seasons, he had a very poor year. Nonetheless,
got you.
Good stats. But and I understand when you look at the stats from this year from Jack Campbell, an 888 save percentage and a 3.41 goals against average. That tells you, or that compels you to go with the other guy. That's why they went with Stuart Skinner, because he was playing better than Jack Campbell. I understand that. But at the same time, Campbell still had a record of 21-9-4 in the regular season. And even last year in the playoffs with the Leafs, or the last 2 years, his stats are good. He had one bad game against the Tampa Bay Lightning last year where he let like 5 goals in on 17 shots, and it dropped his save percentage. Other than that, he was spectacular. Like, he played great the last 2 seasons for the Toronto Maple Leafs. And to me, to go with a guy who just had so many inconsistencies and not go with the guy who you signed for $5 million for 5 years, it's just a bonehead move.
Yeah, bonehead move it might be. I think it also is just clearly indicative of what the franchise and the coach thinks of Jack Campbell, which he is, as much as what you're throwing out, stats are stats. He has not earned any kind of trust to be a number 1 goalie, but maybe either as a rookie who is struggling.
Yeah, that's what I'm trying to get at.
Maybe you just switch it up and see who the best player can be, because clearly Stuart Skinner was not that guy. We're going to come back from this break, though, Steele. I got a couple more comments on this Edmonton Oilers situation very quickly, just because there are some positives, and also we need to look ahead to the future and some fantasy value, and, of course, wrap this show up with a bow.
Yes, sir. And I do have a question for you about your boy, Evan Bouchards, that I really want to
ask. I'm about to talk about it.
Of course you are, but we got to pay these bills, baby. This episode is brought to you by Athletic Greens. I started taking AG1 because I wanted more energy throughout the day and absolutely hate taking pills and vitamins. And I wanted to see what all the hype was about. So what exactly is this stuff? With one delicious scoop of AG1, you're absorbing 75 high-quality vitamins, minerals, whole food source superfoods, and probiotics to help you start your day off right. The special blend of ingredients supports almost everything: your health, nervous system, your immune system, energy, recovery, focus, and even your aging. Athletic Greens was created when the founder experienced a ton of gut health issues and ended up on a very complicated supplement routine to recover from it, which was costing over $100 a day. That is just way too expensive. So right now, it's time to reclaim your health and arm your immune system with convenient daily nutrition. Again, it's just one scoop in a cup of water every day. I like to take it in the morning. There's no need for a million different pills and supplements to look out for your health. To make it easy, Athletic Greens is going to give you a free 1-year supply of immune-supporting vitamin D and 5 free travel packs with your first purchase. All you have to do is visit athleticgreens.com/NHL Network. Again, that's athleticgreens.com/NHL Network to take ownership over your health and pick up the ultimate daily nutritional insurance. And thank you so much for making the Locked On Fantasy Hockey Podcast your first listen every single day. Don't forget, we are free and available on your favorite podcast platform, including YouTube. So make sure you hit the subscribe, hit the follow button. We appreciate all the love, all the support you show us every single day. Flip, I do want to ask you about Evan Bouchard, but I know you've got a few more talking points on the Edmonton Oilers, where they go with their
Just
future.
super quick.
Super quick. I'll throw it back over to you.
Quick. It's just mostly about Steele. Again, this team just kind of overall misses an opportunity. And, obviously we've talked at length about Toronto Maple Leafs and that fan base and that franchise missing opportunities. But you can't help but feel when Connor McDavid and Leon Draisaitl are doing seriously historic things. And that's what I wanted to just mention, obviously, before we move on, because since the 2022 playoffs started, McDavid paces the NHL with 53 points in 28 games, and Draisaitl is second with 50 points in that same span. And the next closest guy has a cup in Mikko Rantanen at 35 points. That's not even close, Steele. And then you look at things alongside the guys like Sidney Crosby, Evgeny Malkin, Alex Ovechkin, Nikita Kucherov. On paper, that Edmonton duo is colossally better.
Yeah.
In points per game, in goals scored. McDavid leads the league again in points scored for the postseason. So for me, it's just the Edmonton Oilers need to wake up, because honestly, another really good, and as much as opportunities squandered with the Leafs are the same opportunities in terms of how gutless it is for the fan base, you can't help but feel when two guys are doing what they're doing, this kind of style, Steele, you're really missing out on opportunities to put cups and banners in the rafter. So I just wanted to say the point per game basis, that what they were doing, and then again, Evan Bouchard, this is just a huge missed opportunity, because the offense was really starting to click. They're just let down by what you said. Dumb penalties. Couple of, I think one of the stats here, and I missed it slightly, but 4 times in the series, something like that, 4 or 5 times within 90 seconds of Edmonton going up a goal, Stuart Skinner can't make that save, and they give up the lead. I think it was 4 or 5. So that's it right there. And they lose the series.
Again, just the inconsistency of Stuart Skinner. And I still think he's a good goalie. Not trying to put him down right now. Bright future. Just, it wasn't his year. It wasn't his postseason. He's just not there quite yet, but he will be soon enough. But real quick, before we wrap all of this up with a bow, like you said, Evan Bouchard, you've been hot on him, high on him all season long, rightfully so. Great regular season, great postseason as well. 4 goals, 17 points in 12 games in the playoffs. So spectacular what that trade for Matthias Ekholm has done for Evan Bouchard. He's playing way better on the power play. He has a rocket of a slap shot from the blue line. Just incredible accuracy along with it. But what I want to ask you real quick before we wrap up
here we go.
Is Evan Bouchard is on the last year of his entry-level contract. What do you think that he's looking for, and for how long? Like, what kind of term is Evan Bouchard looking to get after a 40-point regular season, a 17-point postseason, and just played actually spectacular?
I think it will really depend on how this season actually starts. Because if he can translate what he did in the postseason into a hot start, I think that Edmonton front office is going to be clamoring to get in the booth and make a deal with Evan Bouchard for something more long-term, and maybe, around the number of, let's say, 5.75, even 6 million if he has a really good start for maybe, Steele, 4 or 5 years, 5 or 6 years if you want to up the ante. But maybe if he starts cold, right, Edmonton will start to play hardball and say, we've really only seen this small sample size, which is true, but I don't think you're going to see that. And here's why. 15 power play points in 12 games in the postseason, new high for defensemen in the cap era. And like you mentioned, that bullet from the point is dangerous. Of course, you've got the benefit of McDavid and Draisaitl doing their thing. But guess what? They're under contract for the next 2-3 years at least. And Bouchard, I think, is not going anywhere in Edmonton. And how about this one? And I know this is getting a little crazy, but we can just leave it at this because it's a little tasty one, Steele. 9 more points for Bouchard with the extra man would have equaled an NHL total record by a guy named Wayne Gretzky with 24 points in 1988. So when you're starting to throw out, I know it's a stretch. I know there's a lot of games left and they didn't make it, and that's what happens in the playoffs. Winners are winners. But my goodness, Steele, when a young player like Bouchard, who is a top 5 pick, now starting to get into mention with records with Wayne Gretzky in the postseason, You got to pay attention fantasy-wise, people, because his draft stock, way up.
Always paying attention to Evan Bouchards here. And we've got you for all those fantasy advice and acquisitions over as well. I'm going to go Evan Bouchards, 4.95 mil over the next 4 years. That will probably be his next contract. I think he still has a little bit to prove, but nonetheless, he's not a handheld name in the NHL right now. So a little bit more to prove, but hey, $5 million over the next 4 years is pretty good.
I'm drinking that Bouchard Kool-Aid.
It's a pretty good deal if you ask me. But yeah, Edmonton Oilers out. Vegas Golden Knights moving on. They again await the Dallas Stars or the Seattle Kraken. We're recording a little bit early, but can't wait for that series as well. Thank you so much.
Panthers Hurricanes as well.
Of course, before we log off over here, going to tee up the Florida Panthers, Carolina Hurricanes tomorrow or on Thursday, whatever day the first game one starts. But nonetheless, we'll tee up both the Western and Eastern Conference Finals for everyone out there. And thank you so much for making the Locked On Fantasy Hockey Podcast your first listen every single day. Make sure you're tuning in Monday through Friday, 7 o'clock in the morning is when the episodes are published. And again, thank you so much for tuning in for today's episode with Flip and I. Have a great day. Good luck with all your bets out there, if you've got any bets at all. And we shall see you back here again tomorrow.
Peace.
Hey, Prime members, you can listen to this Locked On podcast ad-free on Amazon Music. Download the Amazon Music app today.